The night on the distant planet was silent, almost too silent. The human outpost stood at the edge of a wide desert, its metal walls shining faintly under two pale moons. Inside, most of the soldiers and workers were asleep. Only a few lights glowed in the engineer's workshop. The engineer, a man known only as the human with clever hands, worked alone. His table was crowded with tools, wires, and scraps of alien metal he had collected during missions. He was tired, but his mind was still awake, always looking for ways to create something new. Then a sound broke the quiet. It was soft at first, a scratching noise like claws dragging on stone. The man froze. He lifted his head and listened. The desert wind blew, but this sound was different, closer. He stood up and walked to the door, slowly opening it. Cold air rushed inside, carrying with it a faint whimper. Something moved in the shadows. He stepped outside, boots pressing into the sand. His eyes scanned the dark, and then he saw it, small, fragile, and trembling. It was a child. Not a human child. The creature's skin shimmered faintly under the moonlight, glowing in shades of blue and silver. Its eyes were too large for its face, filled with pain and fear. One of its arms hung useless at its side, broken, the flesh torn and damaged. The human's heart tightened. He had heard stories of this species. They were called the Kareen, mysterious, powerful, and feared. Most humans kept their distance. To them, the Kareen were dangerous, rulers of the wild parts of the galaxy. But this was only a child. The child stumbled forward, then fell to the ground with a weak cry. The sound cut deep into the human's chest. Without thinking, he ran to it. "Easy, easy," he whispered, though he knew it would not understand his words. He knelt beside the creature. Its breathing was shallow. Its damaged arm was more than broken. It was beyond natural healing. The flesh looked burned, the bone crushed. No medicine could bring it back. The human looked around. The desert was empty, but he felt watched. His instincts screamed that something else was near, hidden in the darkness. Still, he carried the child in his arms and rushed back inside the workshop. The door closed with a metallic thud. Inside, under the light, the child looked even more fragile. Its skin flickered weakly, as if the glow was fading with its strength. Its large eyes searched the room, then locked on the human. The man took a deep breath. He knew what he had to do. On the table lay pieces of an unfinished project, a mechanical arm he had been working on. It was not meant for humans. It was meant for experiments, for learning, but now, maybe it could become something more. He set the child gently on a blanket. The little alien did not resist. Its gaze followed his every move. He could feel the weight of its trust even though no words were spoken. "Your arm. I cannot heal it," the man said softly, his voice shaking. "But maybe I can give you another." He placed the broken arm under the light. The damage was clear. He thought of the dangers. If the Kareen discovered what he was doing, they might see it as a crime, a violation. Humans and Kareen were not allies. They barely tolerated each other. But he could not let the child die. He began gathering tools. Metal plates, wiring, small energy cells. Sparks flew as he tested circuits. The child flinched at the noise but did not move away. Its eyes remained wide, watching every spark, every motion of his hands. The man worked quickly, his mind racing. He had never tried something like this on a living being, but his clever hands had built machines that lasted years, machines that survived storms and battles. If he failed now, the child would not survive. Hours passed like minutes. Outside, the desert remained quiet, but every so often the man thought he heard a distant rumble, like heavy steps echoing across the sand. He tried to ignore it, focusing only on the task before him. The workshop smelled of burning metal. The human's fingers moved with precision, attaching wires, shaping plates, building something that was part machine, part life. The prosthetic was not beautiful. It was rough, raw, and untested, but it was strong. Finally, he looked at the child. "This will hurt," he whispered. The child tilted its head as if it understood. Slowly, carefully, the man began. He worked with steady hands, removing what could not be saved, replacing it with what he had built. The child gasped, its glowing skin flickering brighter for a moment, then dimming. But it did not pull away. When it was done, the human stepped back. The prosthetic arm was crude but functional, wires pulsing with faint blue light. For a moment there was silence. Then the child lifted its new hand slowly, trembling but moving. Its eyes widened with wonder. The man exhaled in relief. "You're alive," he murmured, but his relief lasted only seconds. From outside came a sound low, deep, and terrifying. A roar that shook the walls of the workshop. The human froze, eyes wide. The child's glow brightened suddenly, almost like a signal. Something massive was approaching. The engineer's heart pounded. He had saved the child. But now he realized the child had not come alone. The roar outside did not stop. It rolled across the desert like thunder, deep and powerful, shaking the very walls of the workshop. The human engineer froze, every instinct screaming that danger was near. He looked at the alien child resting on the blanket, its glowing eyes wide with fear. The child knew that sound. The human swallowed hard. He whispered to himself, "Not now. Not yet." His hands trembled as he reached to dim the workshop lights. Only a faint lamp remained, casting shadows on the walls. He did not want whatever was outside to notice him so quickly. He walked to the door and pressed his ear against the metal. The night was alive with strange noises, sand shifting, claws scraping, heavy breaths. But then it went silent again, as if something waited in the dark. The man stepped back, his mind racing. Should he alert the camp?
Should he hand over the child?
Or should he hide it and pretend nothing happened? He turned toward the table. The little alien watched him, chest rising and falling fast. Its prosthetic arm twitched with weak sparks, not yet fully stable. The child looked so fragile, so helpless, and yet its gaze felt sharp, filled with trust. The human sighed. He knew what others would say. If the soldiers found the child, they would fear it. They might lock it away, study it, maybe even harm it. To them, aliens were not friends. They were rivals, sometimes enemies. No one would believe that helping this child was safe. But the human's heart refused to see an enemy. He saw only a child who had come to him for help. He walked closer, kneeling beside the small figure. "I don't know if you understand me," he whispered, voice soft, "but I won't leave you." The child blinked slowly, as if it understood. The human's decision was made. He would protect the child, but how? The prosthetic he had built was only half finished. It worked, but not for long. If the child tried to run, the energy cell would fail. He needed to make it stronger, more stable. That meant opening the arm again, fixing the wiring, and replacing the power source. Time was short. The roar outside proved that something or someone was already searching. The human grabbed a new set of tools and spread them on the table. Sparks flew once more as he worked. His hands were steady now, fueled by determination. Each second mattered. While he worked, the child tilted its head, studying him. It raised its new hand, fingers stiff and shaky but moving. The sight made the human smile despite the fear pressing against his chest. "You are stronger than you look," he said quietly. The child did not reply, but its eyes glowed brighter as if the words mattered. Suddenly, the workshop door rattled. The human jumped, his heart pounding. Something outside scratched against the metal surface, slow, deliberate testing. He grabbed a wrench and held it like a weapon. The scratching stopped, but heavy footsteps walked away into the sand. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. "They're searching," the human whispered. "They know you're here." He looked at the child again. He had no time left. He quickly adjusted the energy flow in the prosthetic, connecting it to a stronger cell. The arm hummed softly, more stable now, glowing with faint blue light. The child flexed its fingers, stronger this time. It raised the hand toward the human, almost like a gesture of thanks, but the human could not rest. He knew the truth. That roar, that presence in the desert, it could only mean one thing. This was no ordinary alien child. This was a royal one, a prince or princess of the Karin, and if the young was here, then its family was close, maybe even its queen. The human sat heavily on the chair, running a hand over his face. The weight of his choice pressed down. By helping the child, he had crossed a line. The Karin did not forgive humans easily. If the queen discovered him with her young, she might kill him on sight. But what else could he have done? Let the child die? No, his conscience would not allow it. The man rose again, walking to the window. He pulled the curtain just enough to peek outside. The desert stretched into darkness, but then movement. A massive shadow passed between the dunes. It was not human. It was too large, too graceful, too terrifying. The man closed the curtain quickly. His breath came fast. "They're here," he whispered. The child tilted its head, sensing his fear. For the first time, it made a sound, a soft musical hum. Not words, but a voice. A plea, the human froze, then smiled faintly. I understand. You don't want me to give up. The child hummed again, and the prosthetic hand reached for his. Small metal fingers touched his rough human skin. The bond was clear. Two different worlds, but in this moment, both trusted each other. The footsteps outside returned, louder this time. The ground trembled slightly with each step. Dust fell from the ceiling of the workshop. The human pulled his hand away and grabbed a small blaster from the wall. He checked the charge, though he knew it would do little against what was coming. He turned back to the child. No matter what happens, I'll keep you safe. The door shook violently as if something had struck it with great force. The human raised the blaster, sweat dripping from his brow. Then came a roar, louder, closer, shaking every tool on the shelves. The alien child pressed close to him, glowing brighter, its new arm sparking like a beacon. The human realized, too late, that the child was not only injured, it was being tracked. The light from its body was a signal, and now, the queen was almost here. The door had stopped shaking, but the human knew it would not last. Outside, the desert was alive with shadows. Something powerful moved in the darkness, waiting. The engineer felt sweat on his back as he looked at the small alien child beside him. The child's body glowed faintly, its energy rising and falling like a heartbeat. The prosthetic arm he had built was working, but not perfectly. Sparks still flickered from the joints. The power cell hummed weakly as if it would run out at any moment. The human clenched his jaw. He could not stop now. If the child's arm failed, it would not survive the night. He pushed the fear aside and dragged a heavy box onto the table. Inside were parts he had been saving. Stronger alloys, flexible wires, and a rare crystal power source he had hidden from the others. He had once planned to use it for a new kind of drone. Now it would become something more important. The child watched silently, head tilted, glowing eyes following every motion. When the human placed the crystal on the table, the child's eyes widened, glowing brighter. It reached out with its prosthetic fingers almost drawn to the light. The man gently pushed the hand back. Not yet, he said softly. It needs to be ready. He began his work. Sparks filled the air again. Tools whined, metal plates clanged. The sound of building echoed like music in the small workshop. The child sat quietly, never looking away. For a moment, the human felt something strange. The way the child's eyes followed him. It was not just curiosity. It was trust. He had seen trust before, in human children, in soldiers who relied on his machines. But this was different. This was deeper, older, as if the child's entire world depended on him. And maybe it did. The engineer worked faster, his clever hands moving with precision. He cut wires, soldered joints, polished plates. Every few minutes he glanced at the door, afraid of the silence outside. The queen, or whatever beast roamed the desert, was still waiting. He could feel it. When he attached the first piece of the new arm, the child flinched but did not cry out. Its glowing skin pulsed, the light flickering brighter with each new connection. The human paused, worried. Does it hurt? He asked quietly. The child looked at him, then shook its head just once. The human smiled faintly. Brave one, aren't you? The child tilted its head again, and for a moment the human thought he saw the hint of a smile. He pressed on. The new frame was smoother, stronger, more natural. Instead of sharp edges, it curved gently, almost like real bone. The rare crystal hummed softly as he placed it in the core, its light spreading through the wires like blood through veins. The child gasped softly, its eyes glowing bright. Its body trembled, not in pain, but in shock. The new energy was powerful, alive, easy. The human whispered, steadying the arm. It's yours now. Control it. Slowly, the child lifted its new hand. The fingers moved smoothly, no sparks this time. The glow ran across the plates like flowing water. For the first time, the prosthetic did not look like a machine. It looked like a part of the child. The child stared at the arm in wonder. It clenched its fist, then opened it, repeating the motion again and again. Its glow brightened, spreading across its small body. The human leaned back, exhaustion in his eyes but relief in his heart. It works, he whispered. You're whole again. For a few seconds there was peace. Then, the ground shook. The tools rattled on the shelves. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the lamps flickered. The human's relief vanished instantly. He grabbed the blaster from the table, aiming it at the door. The child's glow dimmed in fear. It pressed close to him, small fingers clutching his arm. The engineer's heart raced. He knew what was coming. The Queen. The roar returned, louder than before, shaking the very air. The door groaned under the force of something massive outside. Shadows passed under the crack at the bottom, blocking out the moonlight. The child suddenly stepped forward. Its prosthetic arm glowed brighter, energy surging through the crystal. The human reached to pull it back, but the child stood firm. Its glow was no longer just fear, it was a signal, a call. The human realized with horror what it meant. The child wasn't hiding from the Queen. The child was calling to her. The footsteps outside grew heavier, closer. The ground cracked under the weight. The metal door bent slightly as if it could break at any second. The human looked at the child. Why? Why would you bring her here? The child turned, eyes glowing, and made a sound. It was not a hum this time. It was a word, soft and musical. The human did not understand the language, but he understood the meaning. It had called her mother. The man's stomach tightened. His fears were true. This was not just any alien child. This was the blood of the Queen herself. And now, the Queen had come. The workshop door shook again, harder this time. Bolts rattled, metal groaned. The human gripped his blaster tightly, sweat dripping from his brow. The child stood between him and the door, glowing like a beacon, its new arm shining brighter than ever. The Queen's shadow loomed large against the thin metal wall. The human whispered to himself, "What have I done?" The workshop door bent inward with a loud metallic scream. Dust fell from the ceiling, tools clattered to the floor. The human engineer tightened his grip on the blaster, his heart hammering like a drum in his chest. He had never faced anything like this before. The alien child stood in front of him, its small frame glowing brightly. The new prosthetic arm pulsed with energy, shining like a beacon. The child's eyes stayed fixed on the door, unblinking, waiting. Another strike came. The door bulged, bolts snapping one by one. The man knew it was only seconds before the barrier gave way. Then, silence. The desert outside was still again. No roars, no footsteps. Only the faint hiss of wind sliding through the dunes. The human held his breath. Every muscle in his body was tense. He wanted to believe it was over, that whatever monster had been outside was gone. But deep inside he knew the truth. This was not the end. It was the beginning. A shadow passed across the workshop window. Massive. Slow. Too large for any soldier. Too smooth for any machine. The human's throat went dry and then, boom. The door exploded inward with a single strike flying off its hinges. The blast of air knocked tools and metal across the room. The human shielded his face as dust and sparks filled the air. When the cloud cleared, he saw her, the alien Queen. She stood in the doorway, her towering frame filling the space like a living mountain. Her body glowed faintly, silver blue light running across scales and armor-like skin. Her eyes, giant glowing orbs, burned with power and rage. Her breath came out in deep, rumbling waves, shaking the very floor. Behind her, shadows moved, guards, soldiers, creatures with sharp limbs and glowing weapons. They fanned out, surrounding the entrance, their alien forms ready to strike. The human's hand shook as he raised his blaster. He knew it was useless. He might as well be pointing a toy at a storm. But instinct forced him to stand his ground. The Queen stepped forward, the ground trembling under her weight. Her gaze fell on him first, piercing, unblinking, filled with something more than anger. Judgment. The human froze. Every survival instinct screamed, "Run!" but his legs would not move. Then the child stepped between them. Its small body glowed brighter, and it lifted its new arm high. The prosthetic shone like lightning, casting streaks of light across the dusty workshop. The Queen stopped. The guards around her hissed and raised their weapons, ready to strike. But the Queen lifted one massive hand and they froze instantly. The silence was heavy, thick with tension. The Queen's eyes shifted from the human to the child. Her gaze lingered on the prosthetic arm. She tilted her head slightly, as if studying it, as if unsure what she was seeing. The human lowered his blaster slowly, his breath shallow. He wanted to speak, to explain, but words stuck in his throat. The Queen finally stepped closer, her massive shadow covering them both. Her claws were sharp, longer than the human's entire arm. With one swipe she could end him, but she did not strike. Instead, she lowered her gaze to the child. The little alien raised its prosthetic again, flexing the new fingers. Sparks danced along the metal, energy flowing steady and strong. The queen's breath slowed. Her expression changed. Not rage, but something deeper. Recognition. The human dared to whisper, his voice trembling. I only wanted to save it." The queen's head snapped toward him, her glowing eyes narrowing. The man stumbled back, his heart pounding. Her gaze was like fire. It burned straight through him. The child turned to the queen and made the sound again. That word. The word the human had not understood, but felt. Mother. The queen's body went still. The guards stirred uneasily, their eyes flicking from the child to their ruler. The human realized the truth. He had given a part of himself, his time, his skill, his courage, to the heir of the alien queen. The queen lowered herself slowly, bending her enormous frame until she was closer to the child's level. She reached out one massive clawed hand. For a terrifying moment, the human thought she would crush the prosthetic, tear it away. But instead, she touched it gently. The arm glowed brighter at her touch, energy flowing stronger than before. The child's glow answered, pulsing like a second heartbeat. The queen looked back at the human. Her eyes narrowed, unreadable. "You touched my blood," she said. Her voice was low, deep, like thunder rolling through stone. It was not human language, but somehow he understood. The sound carried meaning beyond words. The human's mouth went dry. He lowered the blaster completely. His voice shook. "Yes, I helped." The queen studied him for a long, tense moment. The silence felt endless. The guards waited, tense and ready to strike at her command. Finally, the queen rose to her full height again. She turned to her guards and gave a single nod. They lowered their weapons. The human exhaled sharply, his knees weak with relief, but fear still gripped him. This was no mercy. This was judgment delayed. The queen turned back to him, her voice like a blade. "You live, for now." Then, with surprising gentleness, she lifted her child into her arms. The small alien clung to her, but its eyes still looked back at the human. Trust remained, even as the queen carried it away. The queen stepped out into the night, her guards following. The desert shook with their retreating footsteps. The workshop was silent again, broken tools scattered across the floor. The human dropped into a chair, his hands trembling. He had faced the queen and lived, but he knew this was not the end. The queen's last words echoed in his mind. "You touched my blood. Now our paths are linked." He closed his eyes, whispering to himself, "What have I started?" The human engineer sat frozen in his chair long after the queen and her guards disappeared into the desert night. His hands still shook and his breath came in short bursts. He had survived something impossible. He had stood face to face with the alien queen, and somehow he still lived. But his heart did not feel safe. It felt heavy, trapped under the weight of what had just happened. Her words echoed in his head. "You touched my blood. Now our paths are linked." Linked. He did not know what that meant, but he was certain it was not over. The silence in the workshop grew unbearable. Tools lay scattered across the floor. The door was broken, hanging from twisted hinges. Dust hung in the air like smoke. Outside, the desert wind howled faintly as if whispering warnings. The man stood slowly, rubbing his tired eyes. He thought the danger had passed, but deep down he knew the queen would return. Queens never left debts unpaid, and he was right. The ground trembled again, soft at first, then louder. Heavy footsteps, rhythmic, inevitable. The human's blood ran cold. He turned toward the broken door just as the shadow returned. The queen had not left. She had only stepped back to gather her strength, or perhaps her patience. Now she returned, not as a furious storm, but as a ruler. She entered slowly this time, her guards flanking her. The child was in her arms, glowing faintly, the new prosthetic shining with life. The human's breath caught. The child clung to her, but still turned its head to look at him. Its eyes, full of trust, did not waver. The queen stopped in the center of the ruined workshop. She set the child down gently, her massive form looming above both of them. Her gaze swept across the room, then locked onto the human. He lowered his head slightly, not in weakness, but in respect. His blaster lay forgotten on the table. He knew weapons meant nothing here. The queen's eyes narrowed. Her voice, deep and resonant, filled the room like thunder rolling across stone. "You touched what is mine." The human forced himself to answer, though his voice shook. "Yes, I saved your young one. Its arm was lost. I built another." The guards hissed, stepping forward, their weapons raised. The queen lifted one claw and they froze instantly. Her attention never left the human. Her gaze shifted to the child, who raised its prosthetic arm again, showing her the gift. The arm hummed softly, glowing with steady light. The queen bent closer, her massive eyes studying every joint, every plate, every spark of energy flowing through it. The silence was crushing. Finally, she spoke again. "This is not your kind's work. This is ours, reborn in your hands." The human swallowed hard. "It is my work. I used what I knew, nothing more." Her voice sharpened. "Lies." The man flinched, but then he forced himself to meet her gaze. "It doesn't matter what you believe. What matters is your child is alive, strong again." The queen's expression was unreadable. The guards hissed again, restless, waiting for her command. One wrong word, one wrong move, and the human's life would end. But the child stepped forward. It placed its small hand, metal and glowing, against the queen's claw. For a moment, the great ruler went silent. Her chest rose and fell slowly. Her gaze softened just slightly. The human saw it. The queen was torn. She could not ignore what had been done. Yet she could not deny the bond between her child and this human. The tension was unbearable. The queen finally stood tall again, towering above all. Her voice shook the walls. "Human, you risked death to save what you should have feared." "Why?" The engineer hesitated. His throat felt dry. But then he spoke, his words simple, honest. "Because it was a child. Because no one deserves to die in pain, no matter their kind." The room fell into deep silence. The queen's eyes burned into him. She could kill him now and no one would question her. Yet something in her gaze shifted. Respect, curiosity? The child looked between them, then stepped closer to the human standing at his side. Its small body glowed brighter, almost defiantly. The queen let out a deep rumbling sound, half growl, half sigh. She turned to her guards. "Stand down." The guards hesitated, then lowered their weapons. The human let out a breath he had been holding for far too long. The queen stepped closer, lowering her massive face until her eyes were level with his. He could see his reflection in those glowing orbs. She spoke slowly, each word heavy. "You live because of my child. But you belong to me now. Your fate is bound to ours." The human's heart sank. He nodded slowly, not daring to refuse. The queen rose again, her presence filling the workshop. She lifted her child back into her arms. The little alien looked at the human one last time, eyes bright with unspoken trust. Then the queen turned, her guards surrounding her as they marched back into the desert. The human stood alone in the ruined workshop. The silence returned, but it was not peaceful. It was heavy, like chains settling around him. He whispered to himself, "Bound to them. What does that mean?" He knew one thing for certain. This was no end. It was the beginning of something larger, something dangerous. The queen had spared him, but at a cost. His life was no longer his own. Outside, in the distance, the desert sky lit up with faint flashes. Alien ships were stirring. Something greater was coming. The desert was quiet again, but the human engineer could not sleep. He sat on the edge of his ruined workshop, staring at the endless dunes. The wind carried faint echoes, whispers of something vast moving far away. His mind replayed the night over and over, the queen's eyes, her words, her warning. "You touched my blood. Now our paths are linked." He could not escape the weight of it. He had saved the child, yes, but in doing so, he had bound himself to something far greater, far more dangerous. The first rays of dawn painted the desert in gold. He rubbed his tired eyes and thought of repairing the door, fixing the broken tools. But before he could rise, the ground trembled again. He froze. The tremors grew stronger, rhythmic, familiar. The same sound as before. Heavy footsteps, the queen was returning. The human's chest tightened. He stood quickly, his legs unsteady. He wanted to run, but where could he go? No human outpost, no ship, no army could hide him from her. A shadow darkened the sand. She appeared, rising from the horizon like a living storm. The queen of the Karen. Her guards marched behind her, weapons glowing faintly, their armor catching the light of the twin suns, and in her arms, clinging close, was the child. The human's breath caught at the sight. The child looked stronger now, the prosthetic shining steadily. Its eyes found him instantly, glowing with something like recognition. The queen stopped before the workshop. Her presence alone made the air feel heavy, pressing against his chest. She lowered the child gently to the ground. The young one's glow brightened as it hurried toward the human. The man knelt, steadying the child as it reached him. The metal arm flexed smoothly, no longer sparking. It worked perfectly now. The Queen watched in silence. Her gaze was sharp, unreadable. The human looked up slowly, his voice cautious. "You came back." Her voice rolled like thunder. "You live still, but not free." The words sent a chill through him. The Queen stepped closer, towering above him. Her shadow swallowed him whole. "My blood carries your mark. Your hand has shaped what is mine. This cannot be undone." The human's throat felt dry. "I did what I thought was right. I only wanted to save the child." Her eyes narrowed, burning with something between rage and curiosity. "You speak of right and wrong as if such things matter between our kinds." The child pressed closer to the human, glowing brighter, as if shielding him. The Queen noticed. She tilted her massive head, studying the bond that had formed. For a long moment there was silence. Even the guard shifted uneasily, waiting for her judgment. Finally she spoke. "You risked death to save what was not yours. Few of your kind would dare. Many would destroy what they fear." The human swallowed hard. "Fear doesn't matter, pain does. A child should not suffer." The Queen's eyes flashed. The guards hissed at his boldness, but she silenced them with a single gesture. Her claws tapped the ground sharp against the stone. "You live," she said slowly, "because my young wills it so. You live because my child chose you. But understand this, human. Your life is no longer your own." The words cut deep. The Queen lowered her gaze almost to his level. Her voice dropped, heavy with power. "You belong to the Karen now. You will answer when called. You will serve when summoned. If you refuse..." Her claws flexed, slicing small scars into the stone floor. "You will not survive." The human's chest tightened. His mind screamed to fight, to argue. But he knew better. One wrong word and it was over. He lowered his head. "I understand." The Queen rose again, her towering figure stretching against the morning light. She looked down at her child, then at him once more. "Your clever hands have changed fate," she said. "Now they belong to more than just your kind." The guards stepped forward, surrounding her once more. The Queen lifted her child back into her arms. The little alien clutched her tightly, but its glowing eyes never left the human. Before turning away, the Queen gave him one final look. Her voice was softer this time, but no less powerful. "Be ready, we will return." With that, she turned, leading her guards back into the desert. The earth trembled with every step until they vanished into the horizon. The human stood in silence, his heart heavy. He had been spared, yes, but spared for what? He looked down at his hands. Hands that had built machines, hands that had saved a life. Now those same hands had tied him to the most feared ruler in the galaxy. He whispered to himself, "What have I become a part of?" The desert gave no answer. Only the faint wind replied, carrying with it the promise of something vast, something inevitable. Far above, in the pale morning sky, he thought he saw a glimmer. Not sunlight, not stars. Ships, alien ships. The Queen's words echoed once more in his mind. "Be ready." The desert was quiet once more. The Queen and her guards had vanished into the horizon, leaving only footprints pressed deep into the sand. The human engineer stood at the broken doorway of his workshop, staring after them until the last shadow disappeared. The silence felt heavier than before. He stepped back inside. The room was a mess, tools scattered, shelves broken, the door twisted beyond repair. The smell of burnt metal still lingered. Every corner reminded him of the night that had just passed, of the impossible choice he had made. His hands shook as he picked up a wrench. He tried to focus on cleaning, on repairing, but his thoughts refused to quiet. The Queen's words echoed over and over. "You belong to the Karen now. Be ready, we will return." The man sank into his chair, his head in his hands. He had survived. He had saved a life. But he could not shake the truth. His fate was no longer his own. For the first time in years, he felt truly powerless. He glanced at the table where the prosthetic had been built. Metal scraps, glowing wires, and the faint hum of the crystal remained. He ran his fingers across the cold surface. His clever hands had once been his pride. Now they felt like chains, and yet he remembered the child's eyes. The way they had glowed with trust. The way it had held his hand, even when the Queen's shadow loomed above. That bond was real, not a trick, not a threat. That thought gave him a spark of strength. But then, outside, A sound broke the silence. Not footsteps this time. Not roars. A deep rumble from above. The human rushed outside, shielding his eyes against the bright desert sun. The sky shimmered strangely. Then he saw them. Dark shapes cutting through the light. Ships. Massive alien ships drifting above the horizon. Their hulls glowed faintly, etched with symbols not of human design. Dozens of them, maybe more, rising slowly like mountains in the sky. His stomach dropped. This was no simple visit. The Queen's words had not been a warning. They had been a promise. The Kareen were awakening. The human stumbled back inside, his breath quickening. If the human outpost saw those ships, panic would spread like fire. Soldiers would prepare for war, and war against the Kareen was suicide. He gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. Had he caused this? If he had let the child die, maybe the Queen would never have come. Maybe the desert would have stayed quiet, but he couldn't regret it. He couldn't undo what had been done. He had chosen life over fear, and now the cost was rising. A sudden knock startled him. He spun around, blaster in hand, the door creaked, and a figure stepped inside. Not a Kareen, a human soldier. One of his own. The soldier's eyes swept across the ruined workshop. What happened here? The engineer froze. His mind raced. Should he tell the truth? That he had met the Queen herself? That her child had been in his arms? No, if he told them, they would take the story to the commanders. And the commanders would see only one thing, a threat. They would send weapons, armies, and fire, and that would mean the end of everything. So he shook his head. Sandstorm, he lied. It tore through the camp. Damaged my door. The soldier frowned, clearly suspicious. But after a moment he shrugged. Well, fix it fast. Command says something strange is moving in the sky. Could be trouble, then he left. The human's chest tightened. He looked again at the glowing horizon, at the Kareen ships drifting higher, their shadows spreading wider across the sand. It was only a matter of time before the truth came out. The Queen had spared him, but for what purpose? Did she see him as a tool, an ally, or just a man bound to her will? He sat back down, staring at his hands, hands that had created, hands that had saved, hands that might now bring destruction. He whispered to himself, "Did I save us, or doom us?" The desert wind gave no answer. But far above, the sky rumbled again. The ships were moving closer, their engines humming like thunder. And somewhere hidden within that fleet, the Queen was watching, waiting. The man stood slowly, the weight of his choice pressing harder than ever. He did not know if he was a hero, a fool, or something else entirely. But he knew one thing with certainty. This was only the beginning. The horizon glowed brighter, the sky filled with alien fire. The Kareen had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same again.